Women who've done time. What was women's prison like? I got locked up in women's prison when I was 21. When you first get there they ask if you're addicted to anything. If you said benzos or alcohol, they dosed you up with 4 milligrams of Klonopin a day. Anyone who's been there before knows this. So for the first 2 weeks when I was in the drug treatment area, for other things, I didn't know about the Klonopin. Things were very chill. There was a few verbal fights, but kind of a camaraderie between the women like, we're all just addicts trying to get through this together. We had groups and AA, it was a daily thing for all, which was most except me, the women with children to break down crying about missing them and how they'd literally anything for their kids now that they're sober. You were in a trailer with 2 floors. There was rooms with 4 bunks in them and a community bathroom with individual showers. Lots of hooking up in the bathroom stalls and showers. Something really weird, every few days they passed out electric shavers. There was one for each bunk and there would be a line of girls using these old shavers to dry shave their legs and pubes in the bathroom. Some of them would flip them and use the non-cutting side as a vibrated on others. Gross. I never even considered shaving. There was a microwave you could sometimes use and access to hot water to make noodles and coffee. They gave out stamps, paper and pens to write home if you asked and gave you pads, 1 roll of toilet paper, ghetto shampoo, soap and toothbrush paste. During rec time you could walk around the compound, but there were also classes like yoga, AA, Zumba, gym, library, etc. After 2 weeks there I got moved to the maximum security part. Here you were in a high-tech building with 1 bunk in each room and locked in for most of the day. Or else you could go in the community room and watch TV a few hours a day. No more access to hot water. Women who didn't pay a fine were locked up with baby killers. They were the most shunned. One baby killer got attacked because she asked for my oatmeal I wasn't eating. No more classes of any kind. You had to be there for over 5 years to be put in the trailers by where the drug program was. They even had dogs and could go to the library and pick out books instead of just picking from books left behind. I saw a girl almost die getting her face smashed into a metal door frame. Lots of fights. It really was awful. This is getting long so I'm gonna stop, but if anyone has questions I'm happy to answer. Keep going if you want to. This was riveting. My mom went to prison when I was a junior in high school. She was innocent. The other people had more money and our lawyer was complete shit. Long story short, she was in there for about 1/2 years. There's a lot of girls who either are, or while in there tend to be lesbian. They're literally horny all the time. I remember being 18 and visiting my mom and a few of the younger inmates had looked over at me a couple times and had given that job look with their tongue against their cheek. Another thing is cleanliness. A lot of things get missed. Inmates pretty much do most the work around the prison and my mom knew some people in the kitchen and they had been cleaning one day and figured they would open up the meat grinder because it hadn't been cleaned for a while. As they opened it they found about 1 million maggots inside it. Basically it hadn't been cleaned a lot longer than people thought, and the whole prison had been eating maggot meat. This is why part of my job as the guy who supervises a store from when the boss leaves till when the night manager comes in is to inspect the meat grinder. Every day, without fail, I take a strong flashlight to every part of it. If I want anything cleaned again, they do it no questions asked. You have to clean it every time you use it. There can't be any meat left in that machine, no exceptions. Cleaned again, without fail, no questions asked, clean it every time, and no exceptions. These are the phrases I want in reference to meat prep. Kitchen work in general. You have to clean everything every day all day. When I worked as a cook dishwasher I spent at least 4 hours a day just cleaning. Shut up and get back to cleaning. I was in a jail for non-violent offenders, not prison. It wasn't so bad, honestly. Each sleeping area had 3 bunk beds, 6 lockers, and a payphone. No doors. We got up at 6 AM and lined up for breakfast. Each room had to stay together. Technically order didn't matter, but the women who had been there a while liked to make sure everyone was always in the same spot. Probably helped them feel like they some sort of control, I guess. Food was served on your basic cafeteria trays. Drinks were in these red plastic cups that reminded me of a toddler's learning cup. Things were pretty quiet for the most part. You weren't supposed to share food, but the guards were pretty lax. Most of the day was free time. There was a big living room type area with couches, chairs, and bookshelves. The book selection was horrendous, but most of them didn't bother to read. Outside time was pretty typical of what you'd see on TV. Just a concrete ground with a few basketball hoops. At night, they alternated between movies and church. The movies were regular, mainstream movies. My bunkmate yelled at me on my first morning because I put my glasses on her locker. The top of her locker was right next to my bed, almost like an end table for me, so I thought it'd be okay, but it was not. She wasn't angry, but she was severe enough that I slept with my glasses on from then on out. We were allowed to wear casual clothes, but for some reason, I can't for the life of me remember why, I couldn't wear mine. So one girl let me borrow her nice pair of orange prison pants. She told me to be careful with them because they were the pair she reserved for wearing to court. One woman was always reading her horoscope, but a lot of the time she didn't understand what certain words meant, or didn't know how to pronounce them. Overall, it was pretty laid back and chill, but thinking of the women in there always depresses me. Couldn't wear your casual clothes because they had strings or pointy parts? Mom was a corrections officer for a long time. So she worked in a jail, not prison. She said there was a ton of drama and sex in the women's unit compared to the men's. She referred to it as working with the b****s. Lol, I miss my frickin' mom. As someone who spent time in jail, yes, the same jail my mom worked at, I can tell you drama in the men's unit is usually at a 0 or a 10. The women's unit was probably more of a constant 6. The b****s just walked around like they were in a high school dorm, haha. My dad has been a CO for almost 20 years now, at a level 4, mid-max security prison, but not max, and he actually enjoys his job. He said he always sticks with the firm, but fair mindset, and the inmates actually respect the hell out of him for it. He's only been involved in a couple of actual incidents, and they were minor, one of which was that he used to work RDP, which was a program for younger inmates and those that were underage and on the path for prison, to do community service and whatnot. Turns out one of the guys there was in there for raping my cousin. Had to get him transferred before there was an incident, but most of those guys just want to do their time in peace without getting treated like second-hand citizens. All the COs I've met are f***ed in the head power trippers. How does your dad deal? It's just a job. Most of his co-workers that are friends of the family are good people too. There are the occasional offs like in any other occupation, such as a couple of COs from a different local prison got fired criminal charges because one was a woman having sex with inmates, and another guy got busted beating the shit out of one behind closed doors. But around here they take the job pretty seriously. I'm not a woman, and I haven't done time, but my mum did. It was before I was born, and though I never knew why she got locked up because she would never tell me, I think it was something to do with prostitution or breaking and entering. Though she was still naturally beautiful, prison had done a lot of damage to her physically. She'd had her nose broken in multiple places, so it was really crooked and busted in. She would tell me how some of the bigger women in prison would try to sexually assault her, rape, I guess, but how, in her own words, and I love this about her, that she would take the beatings of her life before she would let them do that to her. She was only a small woman, not much over 5 feet 2, and was pretty skinny, but she had the heart of a giant. So I'm sure she would have made it hell for anyone trying to take advantage of her like that. She passed away from a drink driving accident when I was 16. She was an alcoholic, and though she'd defeated a lot in her life, alcohol was something she couldn't. So, woman's prison sounded like a rough place coming from her. I really miss her, and I wish I could have asked her more about it and the rest of her life before she had me. But no matter what, though she was a bit of an outcast to society, she was and will always be my hero. Love you, mum. Hugs. This is sweet. I'm sorry for your loss. I taught Get Prep at a county house of correction for about 6 years. About halfway through started splitting time between the men's and women's units. I agree with other posters that the drama was always at about a 6, mostly about who was writing letters to whose man on the out. It made me sad how these women were so convinced that they needed a man to take care of them and would do anything to keep one. even though it was usually their boyfriend who got them into drugs and prostitution in the first place. I really never got hit on, but the first time I was up there I tutored 3 women for about an hour, and as we were leaving the classroom one of them thanked me for working with them. Another lady said close the door a minute, I'll thank ya, but it was just a laugh. I did hear some stories about the night shift, but who knows. I left kind of abruptly. A high school called and offered me a job, pretty much the next day, as high schools tend to do, but I negotiated a week to transition. When I announced to my female students I was leaving, one of them just burst into tears. All in all, the women and men were just different, the men more jokey and the women more serious, interested in kids and family and such. Man, I feel really bad for that woman who cried. You must have been like the one ray of sunshine in her life for her to have a reaction like that. She said I was the only person who was ever kind to her, which, while not strictly true, there were lots of good people in that institution doing their best to help people, was pretty heartbreaking. She and I had an interesting history. She had been in and out a few times over 3 or so years, and had these ridiculously high placement scores, so every time she showed up I wanted to get her into class, but she kept getting into trouble and becoming ineligible. This bit, however, something seemed different with her. She decided to take treatment seriously, joined the choir, and finally made it to class. One of my best students. I'm sure she got her get and I hope she's doing well. Probably late to the party, but the best way I can describe it is like a boarding school full of every type of female you can imagine. I spent about 2 months at a facility with around 400 women, whose charges ranged from small petty crimes to rape and murder. Everyone had their own cliches that they kept to, but there was a lot of stupid drama. Try to think of the most troubled girls from high school, and then imagine 400 of them stuck together, in a place that is miserable, where they are isolated from their family and the rest of society. That's basically the gist of it. But like any community, there are good people and bad people, and most of the time you can find a like-minded individual to make friends with. The facility I was at had a huge library, pretty good food, and cable TV, so I considered myself lucky in that aspect. I mostly kept to myself and read a lot, and I never got into any fights, and stayed out of trouble for the most part. Drugs and contraband still got in, a lot. That always made things interesting. I met some really strange people, and saw women who committed unspeakable crimes. It opened my eyes to a lot of things I had never seen before. Overall though, my time wasn't as bad as it could have been, and I learned some things, and hopefully I will never go back. What were the crimes? Now I'm curious. Some pretty fucked up shit, to put it lightly. There were a mother and her daughter in forcibly abusing multiple children that were placed in their care by CPS. One girl around my age killed her baby, then put it in a trash bag in her car, drove to score some dope, and got pulled over. Another woman microwaved her baby. There was a shocking amount of cases where women were abusing children that were placed with them from CPS, which is so sad in itself. That was an eye-opener.